Standard Chartered presents 18 India Business Leader Awards in partnership with Hindustan Times.
So, ladies and gentlemen, this is what we traditionally do here at the India Business Leader Awards. We always start a conversation with our chief guest. And Mr. Puri, once again, thank you very, very much for being here this evening. And then, of course, we engage and invite opinion from our India Business Leader Awards nominees, winners, and, of course, our jury. Mr. Puri, I'm going to kick things off. Yesterday we heard Mr. Jaishankar at Mr. Amitabh Kant's book launch talking about the fact that foreign policy is going to more and more dictate the economic blueprint, the economic roadmap, the economic aspiration, and the economic priorities of nations, and more so in the context that we are in today. I want you to put on your former diplomat's hat as well, and take us through what you believe are going to be the implications of how closely interwoven foreign policy and economic policy is likely to be going forward.
I'm happy to do that. I will choose my words carefully because I don't want to intrude into my friend Dr. Jaishankar's turf. I was not present at the book launch. I had the privilege of Amitabh presenting me a copy before that. I've leafed through it, even at the risk of being subjective. I think it's a seminal contribution to providing an overview of India's development story, not just in the past 9 years of the Modi government, but with a longer perspective. Let me now turn around to what you are saying. Let me state this in terms of some small but evident bullet points. One is that our economy today, which is around $3.8 trillion, 50% of our GDP comes from the external sector, which means the value of goods imported and exported, it means the remittances and so on. Yeah. Therefore, for anyone to suggest that foreign policy and our overall economic story are not interrelated would be, I think, venturing into what I would call something which is unimaginable. So there is a very strong relationship. But I think another point which comes through, and as I said, I have not fully read Amitabh's book, it is that today there are some things we can do. We are in charge of domestic processes. We are fortunate that we have a political leader who has a grassroots level understanding. He's come after spending 12 years as chief minister of a large state, and who also has a very clear vision on where he wants to take India. 2047, Viksit Desh, getting rid of colonial baggage, etc. But the external processes, and I don't mean just the economic interaction, but let's say by way of an example, the events that started on 24th February 2022, Russia-Ukraine, the turbulence it created, the kind of disruptions that were produced are there. Now you have one of two ways of reacting to that. One is you take ideological positions and you say you will not do this, you will not do that. On the other, you have a pragmatic approach where, forgive me if I come back to the energy sector because that's one of the sectors I'm more intimately involved with. You need to ensure availability of energy. You need to ensure affordability of energy and sustainability, the trilemmas. So how did we handle it? Very different from the way the European economy has handled it, very different from how the others handled it. Shereen, India's imports of crude from the Russian Federation when the financial year ended 31st March 2022 was 0.2%. Today, I don't have the latest figures, it could be as large as 30% of our imports coming from there. But it's not the only change that has taken place. There are other changes. I'm importing, I means the country is importing $20 billion of energy from the United States. We used to import crude from 27 countries a few years ago. We are now importing from 39 countries. So, if you can, with the benefit of wise, politically stable and strong leadership, convert a challenge like that into an opportunity, then you rise. And that's precisely what we are witnessing today. And I think the Atmanirbharta part, the fact that you have to come to terms, I think Dr. Jayashankar said something about a rising China, a China fix. I saw the reports. Look, I spent 39 years in that profession. And during those 39 years, I always said, and I always felt, that if at home you were, it doesn't mean the GDP, what you were, where you were. You know, exactly 50 years ago to this date, I got my first job in the company that received the first award. And I look back at those 50 years, because then they were not as far-sighted. Mainlines one used to be detergents, you know. They were a little far-sighted. They started introducing fast foods. Didn't work that well. So today when I saw that campaign, I said, see how it has evolved. Generations after me rose to become chairman of Unilever and so on. Today, India, if you are an Indian representing India, or if you're an Indian businessman dealing with the Europeans, dealing with anyone in the world, it evokes admiration and respect. Because you've not only arrived on the situation as the 5th largest economy, but I believe you're slowly but surely, within a few months, I think by 2025 will be a $5 trillion economy. And you are moving up from being the 3rd largest economy in the world, and you'll have a lot of space there. And that is where foreign policy is determined by hard economic development policy, and foreign policy in turn provides a guiding framework. And that's, I think, what my friend Jayashankar was saying yesterday.
Yes, he was. But I want to pick up on what you mentioned, and you brought up the Russia-Ukraine war and the approach that India took, especially when it comes to importing or continuing to import crude from Russia. You said it's gone from 0.2% to almost 30%. Estimates suggest that it could perhaps be higher as well. One understands the need to do that, given the fact that we are largely dependent on imports and at a price that makes sense for us. Why not? But do you believe that that opens up challenges, given the fact that Russia finds itself increasingly more and more isolated? Will your friends have the patience in future? They understand it now, but will they have the patience in future, especially if they see this trajectory moving higher and higher?
I wouldn't worry too much about that. I spent many professionally useful years as far as I'm concerned in New York. I had the privilege of presiding over the UN Security Council. I was, in fact, India was presiding over the Security Council when the wars took place in Libya and Syria. That was the use of force also. So let's not turn around and say that this is the first time force has been used from the outside to change regimes. I didn't justify it then. India's position then was absolutely clear that give diplomacy a chance, use the margin of persuasion, bring the warring factions to the negotiating table. That continues to be our stand today. But the situation is that the multilateral system in the United Nations, or the multilateral system anchored in the United Nations, is a broken system. Today, countries will fend for themselves. I don't think there's any popularity contest going out on there as to who has more admirers. I think the only contest you need to win is that if you're a democratically elected government, you will be answerable to your consumer, to your taxpayer. And today, in spite of all that has happened, all the cutbacks in production, I was looking at the benchmark figures today. I think one of them is at 72 and the other is at 76. This in spite of the cut in 1.6 million barrels of production in a day. By the way, for those of your friends, our friends here who don't know, the world consumes something like 100 million barrels a day. India consumes about 5 million barrels a day. We don't have any ideological hang-ups on whether we import 1 million from X, Y, or Z. Our traditional suppliers have been UAE, Saudi Arabia, Iraq, Kuwait, and now Russia. And Guyana is coming on board, others, and I keep saying to my Western interlocutors, because they seem to be getting trapped in some kind of a moral halo of their own making, saying that, the world will move on, the world needs to get energy. And by the way, if India didn't buy that 30% of our requirement from the Russians, if we had to buy it from the Saudis and the UAE, and Russian oil was not on the market, you know what the price of oil today would be? So instead of one large European economy which is facing recession, it would have been in deep recession today. And, large countries, you can't say you're a former diplomat, either you are one or you're not. But, the largest economy in the world, which is what, $23, $24 trillion, I always look at Amitabh, he's always got better figures than me. They are looking at what is called a government spending crisis, which they have, because they have a debt of something like $33 trillion, which is more than a year and 1/4 of their GDP. Now, everybody's got problems, but if you have a democracy as vibrant and as mature as ours, you are able to resolve those things internally. I'm not saying that our narrative is an easy one. I mean, you were just trying to trip the Deputy Chief Minister of Maharashtra on something. But that's the beauty. We have a press which trolls us for the wrong things. We have a judiciary which prides itself in its independence, and the judgments they give are cited by the apex courts all over the world. So, and we have a political class which is learning how to deal with these, thanks to Mr. Modi.
Standard Chartered presents 18 India Business Leader Awards in partnership with Hindustan Times.
I'm going to get some questions in, and I know that Mr. Kotak is always ready. Sir, you've got the microphone right there. Go ahead with your comment as well as your question to Mr. Puri on this being the unique opportunity. It's answer. It'll come on. Yeah.
Welcome to Mumbai. I know you spent some time in Mumbai earlier. As you look at the economics and politics, one of the regions which has benefited significantly after COVID and particularly after Russia-Ukraine is the Middle East.
Is the?
Middle East. And India has brilliantly built its relationship politically and economically with UAE, Saudi Arabia, and many other parts of the Middle East. Middle East itself is changing. Israel, UAE, friendship, or even Iran now talking to Saudi Arabia and getting better. It's becoming the new power. How do you see, from an economic point of view, they're becoming much larger investors into India as well. How do you see India, Middle East, energy, politics, and of course, investments from them into India?
Well, trust Mr. Uday Kotak to draw attention to what I believe, not just because you've asked this question, but I genuinely believe that what is happening in the Middle East in terms of overall geopolitics is something truly fascinating. You mentioned the big things. Let me start with the small things. When the civil war in Syria took place, and the growth or the birth and the growth of ISIS took place, Iraq, Syria, the Shia crescent, it would be stretching from Iran, Iraq parts, and Syria. You remember the then president of Syria was expelled from their regional organization. He's been admitted back. Could you have imagined that the Shia bastion Iran would be speaking to the Saudis, or for that matter, some of the other fundamental changes that you are referring to are taking place? There are two separate processes there. One is India's capacity to understand and deal with that. Forgive me, but I think that started much before these changes happened. I think the personal chemistry that Prime Minister Modi has established with almost all these leaders was a process which started, which predates these changes. But some of the other changes are that if the leading power, now I have to be very careful in my words, if the leading political military dispensation, the largest economy, vacates space. I'm saying, let's say Afghanistan, or for that matter somewhere else, and a China, which is, I said, what, 12, 13, 14 trillion dollars economy moves in, there are economic impacts of that. But India, I believe, and this is my short answer, forgive my long-winded preambular explanation, but I think India's uniquely positioned, both in terms of its bilateral relations, both in terms of its relations with UAE, Saudi Arabia, even Iran. Couple of things have to give. The importance of the Middle East is not just energy. They are also now their sovereign funds, their ability to influence other things, their integration into the evolving and changing, I mean evolving, but it's not just evolving slowly, very fast changing global situation. I think India, I just saw the other day, our national security advisor was in there with the security advisors of two other countries. Now, these things didn't happen earlier. Again, that's a tribute to the dynamic and far-sighted nature of our foreign and security policy.
Yeah, you know, we've got Mr. Kant here, and as I pointed out, he launched his book last evening in Delhi, and Mr. Puri was talking about how he has his pulse on the numbers. Mr. Kant, I think what everyone in this room is curious to know, and we'd like to get your opinion on that as well, is this really the breakout moment now as far as India's manufacturing aspiration is concerned? I know that you believe that to be the case, that to be true, but to ensure that it is in fact a reality, what do you believe needs to happen?
Shereen, very simple. That we have to become the most productively efficient country in the world. We've given ourselves the production-linked incentive scheme, which has accelerated the pace of manufacturing. But we need to become very easy. We need to become very simple, which is what the government is working towards. We need to do away with a lot of laws, rules, regulation. Just let the private sector fly. That's very important. And that's what increasingly the government is doing through structural reforms of GST, IBC, making things easier, simpler, bringing in Gati Shakti, pushing the pace of infrastructure. That is what the government is doing.
Let the private sector fly.
I am totally in agreement with Amitav. Today you are celebrating in one category the titans, you know, the guys who have lifetime achievement, who personify excellence and the very finest. If you are a 3.8 or a $4 trillion economy and you're going on to be a $5 trillion economy, I'm very clear that the wealth generation which comes from the private sector needs not only to be encouraged, but you need to devise ecosystems, and we are getting there. I mean, we are tweaking systems, and I think this is the most receptive government. If you have a good idea, let us know. We get there. Sometimes the interactive process between the suggestion and the response is not what one side would have hoped. Yeah. But my God, I see the changes which have taken place, and Amitav mentioned only some of them. Look, the proof of the pudding, I think, comes as the expression goes, when you find youngsters taking advantage of the opportunities that are arising. Look, I come from a state where you're seeing a younger generation move outwards. I go there, including recently when I was there 3 days ago, and I tell them, but there's a reverse thing taking place. A lot of our professionals, doctors who went to the US and Canada are coming now and applying back because looking 5 years ahead or 10 years ahead, they see this is where the opportunity is. I mean, what you did in COVID, you know, 224 million, 224, what is it? I'm losing my figures. A crore vaccines. Yeah. Manufactured, I see the face of Indian vaccine, therefore I suddenly, manufactured and freely distributed. We came from zero. I was civil aviation minister during those 2 years of the pandemic. We flew in 1,500 tons of medical supplies. We didn't even have the basics, what do we call them, the PPE kits and oxygen. Yeah. We distributed 942 tons internally within the country. Today, You are not amongst 193 countries, I think it was 63 or 64. So commercial arrangements with the Serum Institute, whatever. But today, India, healthcare system, thrive. But not only that, look at the airlines. I mean, look today.
That's a touchy subject currently, sir, in this environment. You're talking about airlines, but we've just got a situation where another one has approached the NCLT. You've got a temporary reprieve.
Look, there is a saying, I shouldn't repeat it here, that if you're a billionaire and you don't know what to do with your money, buy an airline, you'll probably become a millionaire. But no, but seriously, Air India is a case in point. The manner in which the privatization or disinvestment of Air India took place, I was told, and I have a collaborator here, sitting here, I was told that the effort had been made on 2 earlier occasions and you would never be able to sell it because somebody in our system thought you should retain 24% or 25%.
Yes.
So I used to ask them, you took over a perfectly healthy airline, made a royal mess of it in 50 years, and now you want to retain that control. Why would anybody put their money in and buy it? Anyway, we won our point. This is one of the most successful operations. Even the second bidder price was 15% above the reserve price. And the rest is history. Today, Air India has ordered, 500 or so planes with an option on another 400. Yeah. The heads of state of the United States and France write letters of appreciation to our Prime Minister. Thank you for creating so many thousands or jobs in there. US. And that's not the only airline. There is another airline, okay, large market share. I don't mind naming them, Indigo. Yeah. They've ordered another 400-500 planes. So when I was Civil Aviation Secretary, there was this regular bantering between my secretary and me. So I used to start by saying, how many planes do you have? Like a little kid, He said, 760. I said, how many do you want? 1,200. I said, what are you talking about? You'll get 2,000 plus. I'm telling him that 2,000 figure. India's civil aviation is booming. Our airports are full. Our automobile manufacturing, I don't know, I saw a statement by Gadkari ji the other day. He said in 3-4 years, we'll be the largest automobile manufacturer in the world. EVs, I mean, you haven't come to green energy. I'm ready to talk on that. India is on the move, and you are honoring people who have made that possible.
No, absolutely. You're very right in pointing that out. And many of those movers and shakers are present here in this room. But, you talked about the transition, the green transition. And I think one of the opportunities as well as challenges that's held up in the Indian context, and Ridham Desai is here, he's done a whole report on that, where decarbonization is being held up as an opportunity and a current challenge as well. Let me end by asking you on that front, Mr. Puri, in terms of the climate transition and the energy roadmap, the milestones, the next set of milestones that you believe India will achieve.
Let me, look, the time is short, and again, I don't want to tread on anybody else's turf, the environment minister or anybody. Let me tell you, the energy transition insofar as the hard facts are concerned. When Mr. Modi assumed responsibility, our biofuel blending, that is ethanol, was 1.4%. We had a target of 10% blending by November 2022. We achieved it 5 months before time. We have a target of 20% ethanol blending, biofuel blending by 2030. We are going to do it by 2025. I don't mind saying here we'll do it even before 2025. We have E20 blended fuel already in 100 bunks in this thing. Compressed biogas, absolutely moving very fast. We have a target of 5,000 Satat plants. We have 42. I already have arrangements in place for another 130 or so. We are moving. Green hydrogen, and that's the real story. Anyone who's a prominent manufacturer of electrolyzers in the world is tied up here. And green hydrogen lends itself to success if the demand, the consumption, and the production points are in close proximity. That's happening in India. And I'll give you one company alone. I don't want to be advertising them, but I think one of the winners there was a support from them also, Space Forest. I signed an MOU with my Singaporean counterpart that they are setting up a new electricity plant with GE, and the green ammonia for that will go from India. Submission 1. Submission 2, there is a German company called Unipar, I think. I always look at so that I don't mix up names, problem of growing old. So they are going to buy the green ammonia from India. So green hydrogen, I believe, not only is, but slowly people will realize. What do you need for green hydrogen? As I said, if you got the consumption demand, you can have the capacity to produce, and you have electrolyzers. We've incentivized it. I think under the PLI scheme, we gave, 19,700 crores to start with by way of seed money. So I said, this is the green transition. I mean, I could go on, but I know you have awards to hand out.
Hardeep Puri, many, many thanks for joining us here at the India Business Leader Awards. Thank you very much for sharing your thoughts and your views on what the road ahead looks like.
Standard Chartered presents 18th India Business Leader Awards in partnership with Hindustan